Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully everyone managed to get a coffee. Someone was kind enough to find me one, which I did appreciate, which is always nice for a networking break. Right, let's move on to our next keynote. We are joined by Rajeev Peshawaria, Chief Executive Officer at Stewardship Asia Centre, and we are talking how to maximise profit by maximising purpose. Let's have a warm welcome from Rajeev, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Should we try this once again? Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I know it's just before lunchtime, but hang in there for another 25 minutes, if you will. Okay, so we're going to talk about maximum purpose, maximum profit, if that's even possible. I spent 22 years in the corporate world and then decided that I wanted to change my title to that of a struggling author. Why do I say struggling author? I like to write books, but nobody likes to read books anymore. But that's what I do. And these days, I mostly spend my time in a nonprofit in Singapore called Stewardship Asia Centre, where we look at the opportunity side of environmental and social sustainability. With that, let me start with some context setting. We live in times of exciting opportunities and daunting challenges at the same time. Some of the opportunities. In the US, every 1,000 Americans own 800 cars between them, and that's the largest number of car ownership in the world per capita. If you guess, what's the number in China? Anybody? 100? Well, it's 200, but close. If 200 is the number in China, what's the number in India? Anyone? It's 50. So you see, that's why auto companies are salivating, calling this the Asian century. Now, India is an interesting country by itself. India's luxury goods market by 2030 is projected to be $200 billion. India's GDP by 2017 at 47 is expected to be $26 trillion. And it makes India a strange country because it's at the same time the richest and the poorest country in the world, because the largest number of people living below poverty are also in India. According to the World Economic Forum, the next many years will provide $10.1 trillion of new business opportunities every year if we address environmental and social challenges. And 395 million jobs by 2030. So opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. At the same time, lots of daunting challenges. 80% of the people in the world see more risk than benefit in personal data sharing. We are signing away our lives, accepting click on websites without reading the fine print because of convenience, but we are worried about that. Here's an interesting one. 6 billion people out of the 8 today have mobile phones. How many do you think have access to a working toilet? Anyone? It's 4.5 billion. Sorry to say, if you really want to go, there's no app for that yet. The richest 1% of the world own twice as much wealth as how many people? The remaining 99% of us. Talk about income inequality. Percentage of Asia's population that will face severe water scarcity by 2050 as high as 40%. And the percentage of humanity living on less than $5.50 a day, my dear friends, that's half of humanity living on less than $5.50 a day. Talk about exciting opportunities and daunting challenges at the same time. We are empowered because everybody has a supercomputer in their pocket, but unequal and exposed to the extent of being naked because privacy is all but dead. Some more trivia for you. How many Earths do we need to cater to current levels of human consumption? Anybody? Sorry? 1.7 is absolutely right. And it will be 2.0 by 2030. How much money is currently sitting in ESG funds? This is pools of capital that is supposed to go towards environmental and social impact. Are you ready to fall off your chair? It's as much as $43 trillion, expected to reach $50 trillion by 2025. Question how much of this money is actually reaching environmental or social impact. my favorite question. Of the top 100 economies in the world, how many are countries and how many are companies? Does anybody have a guess on this one? 69 are companies out of the top 100 economies. What does that say about the role of business in addressing these existential challenges? These three, in my humble opinion, are the biggest challenges of our times today. Yeah? So, in terms of solutions, there are many, many solutions being bandied about all over the world, but the one framework that's become the front runner of all solutions is ESG, ESG, ESG. You cannot go through an hour of your life today without hearing these three letters. Our research at the Stewardship Asia Center says ESG is not enough. What we really need is businesses to make money, but make money by doing good. Doing well by doing good. Because 69 of the top 100 economies are businesses, businesses have to solve this problem, and businesses exist to make money, so they must solve this by making money by addressing the very challenges that threaten us today. Question, is that even possible? Or is that a poetic idea? Make money by addressing environmental and social sustainability. Is it possible? If so, how? Let's take a look. Here's a CEO during their 10-year tenure as CEO of a big FMCG company, provided 290% return to shareholders during their 10 years. They did that by creating a sustainability-based business plan and did not do it because of regulatory pressure or tax or green incentives. Who is this? Many of you will know this. This is Paul Polman during his time at Unilever. Is it possible to do well by doing good, ladies and gentlemen? Ask Paul Polman. Here's another one. 21,000% stock price appreciation since IPO in 1992. This company has focused on the S of ESG, social. They were one of the first companies in the world to provide full healthcare benefits even to part-time workers. In many of the countries, they still spend more money on employee benefits than they spend on raw materials. Who is this? Howard Schultz. Now, I know Starbucks is under a lot of controversy these days, but at that time, when he was running the company, all of this was absolutely true. Here's another one. This conglomerate has been in business and growing profitably for 155 years. The average span of a company these days is 18 years. They are in every possible business, from steel to software to hospitality to airlines to beverages, you name it, and they are in more than 100 countries. 66% of share capital belongs to charitable trusts. $385 billion and growing for 155 years. Hugely profitable. Which conglomerate is this? Yes, it is. We are talking about sustainability today. But look what the founder said in the 1800s. In a free enterprise, the community is not just another stakeholder in business, but is in fact the very purpose of its existence. Is it possible to do well by doing good, ladies and gentlemen? Ask the Tata Group. I could go on, but there is plenty of evidence. Let me show you one last one. This picture of scorched earth is the Golden Triangle, the Doi Tung region of Thailand, northern Thailand. And the picture below is of independent, heavily armed militia that ruled this area of villages until about 35 years ago. There were only two professions, prostitution and drug trade. And if you didn't succumb to any of these two, you were beaten up mercilessly by these militia with chains once or twice a week. Life was horrible beyond imagination. There were no schools, there were no hospitals nearby, and if you fell sick, the only medicine was opium, so there was heavy-duty addiction as well. One woman, the princess mother of Thailand, once landed in this area and said, "I reject this present. I want a better future for these people," she told the head of her foundation. And fast forward, today, those same impoverished villagers own highly profitable businesses in 5 verticals like macadamia, coffee, tourism, garments, fabrics, etc. And that area which was totally deforested is now totally reforested. And the customers of these villagers include IKEA, Muji. They use Italian designers. Hugely profitable global businesses. Is it possible to do well by doing good? Ask the Doi Tung Development Project. If you're still not convinced, and if I had more time, I would go on and give you more. I've got 500 such examples, my dear friends, but I'll stop here. For all these great stories, there are also stories of greenwashing, purpose washing, hushing, all those things that we're talking about here. All right? And then you know stories like purpose washing. This lady, Elizabeth Holmes, we wanted to believe this story. The next Steve Jobs in Silicon Valley was going to be a woman. She even started dressing like him. But then when she had to choose between truth and fraud, sadly, she chose fraud. So the question is, if you look at all these good stories and bad stories that I told you, we can create a spectrum of environmental and social action. You have the greenwashers and the purpose washers. They profit from today's challenges. They have no desire to solve for environmental or social sustainability. You have the blissfully ignorant. What climate change? What inequality? Even if these things exist, it's not my problem. Then you have the window dressers. Everybody's talking about sustainability these days. I better be seen doing something. Beautiful mannequins in the window, all form, no substance. Then you have the box checkers. Check, 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 whatever the law says, and no more. We'll come back to that in a minute. And then you have some champions of environment and society, and the difference between the left and the right, ladies and gentlemen, those guys are profiting from today's challenges. These guys are finding profitable solutions to today's challenges. The question is, how can we move more people to the right? To answer the question, how do we move more people to the right, let me ask you another question. What is common between FTX, Enron, and Theranos? In a more interactive session, when we have more time, I engage and I ask people, and what most people tell me, that it is about weak governance. The board was asleep at the job, and it is about weak compliance, weak governance. So what's the response? Stronger governance. Here come more laws. Here come more governance. Here comes more policies, more regulation. Right? You've seen this movie before? Now, there is a huge problem with this kind of thinking and this kind of behavior. Why? Because I met this interesting guy a few years ago. His name is Andy Fastow. For those of you who might know this name, he was the former CFO of Enron. I met him just after he came out of his jail sentence, finishing his jail sentence. Here's what he said to me. Many people believe Enron was a failure of compliance. I disagree. It was a failure of culture. He went on to tell me that actually we never technically broke any laws. We broke the principle behind the laws. We found loopholes behind the laws, but technically we did not break any laws. We proved to the world that we can create the world's biggest corporate scandal without breaking the law. So if more governance is all that we throw at today's problems, we really have a problem. Because talking about corporate governance, we've been doing this study regularly. I'm showing you a 2018 study, but the 2024 study and the 2020 study that we did also has similar data, and as have other studies of this type. But here's what we ask boards. How do you spend your time in board meetings? Turns out 60% of time is spent in regulatory compliance, risk management, and financial performance. Now, these boards are supposed to prevent things like Enron from happening. They spend most of their time doing that, and they don't even succeed at preventing, leave alone helping us solve for environment and social. We asked the same board directors, what don't you spend enough time on? And here's what they said. So why don't you spend time on these sorts of things? They said, well, we are the fiduciaries of the shareholders. Our job is to maximize shareholder wealth. Anything that comes in the way as cost or risk, we are supposed to be the guardians of that. Well, wake up, board directors, because the world has changed. Yes, you are the fiduciary of the shareholder, but a fiduciary of the shareholder focuses his or her attention on the things that matter, on the things that create corporate value. Today, 70 to 90% of corporate value sits in intangible assets like reputation, leadership, ability to innovate, etc., responsibility. And if you're not spending any time on that, are you a good fiduciary? Corporate governance needs to turn upside down. Now, governance focuses on these three things, as I said. Let's look at a couple of these. Regulation. A lot of times people will tell me, oh, the existential crisis that we are facing will only be solved with tougher regulation. Well, let's think again. Because yes, we need regulation, but regulation sets the minimum standards of good behavior. We all know, since you are attending this conference, you probably don't need convincing that minimum good behavior is not going to solve for climate change or social inequality. We need the highest standards of innovation, and regulation does not spur innovation. It may preserve present value, but does not enhance future value, as we see in the case of Enron, Theranos, and many others. And it's usually reactive. When things go wrong, regulators come in and say, let's pass 5 new laws and make sure this never happens again. But those of us who lost our homes in the 2008 crisis, did we get any relief? Nada. So yes, regulation is important, but is regulation going to save our only home and society? Absolutely not. Then they say, what gets measured and incentivized gets done. How many of you have heard this phrase, what gets measured and incentivized gets done, right? Every business school, every management course will teach you that. Please be careful. Just because it's a mantra that every business school talks about doesn't mean it's right. We have known for at least 100 years that overemphasizing measurement and incentivization leads to bad behavior in every walk of life. In every walk of life. In sports, just give you one fun example. In basketball, it is well known that the teams that pass the ball win the game more. The teams that are good at passing win more often. But the NBA, when it's drafting people for pro, what data are they looking at? Individual shooting scores. So if I'm playing for my team and I want to get drafted, do I pass the ball or do I shoot the ball? It's called On the Folly of Rewarding A While Hoping for B. The world's most downloaded, the world's most referenced management article that reminds us that overemphasizing measurement and reporting and incentivization actually leads to bad behavior. In the last few years, measurement and reporting has become mandatory on sustainability. What are we seeing? Lots and lots of greenwashing. But we continue to do the same thing again and again, hoping for a different result, which, as we all know, is the definition of insanity. So, coming back to our spectrum, we asked 10,000 people around the world in 25 countries what motivates the true champions to do what they're doing. Why do they do well by doing good? Why do they take it upon themselves? Do they do it because of reporting pressure? Do they do it because of regulation and compliance, tax and benefits, cheaper capital, green finance, or number 5, and 91% of our global database said they do it because of number 5, they have a different kind of leadership intent. So what is this different kind of leadership intent? A few more minutes on that. It's not just leadership, it is steward leadership. So we all know that the impact on the environment and society is nowhere near what we want. We asked 100 companies, we deeply studied 100 companies, some of the examples I gave you, of those who are doing well by doing good. And we asked them, what do you do? And it turned, that's where we came up with this idea and this model called steward leadership. They follow steward leadership. To understand steward leadership, let's break up the terms. Leadership. Leadership used to be usually a tall white man on the top of the floor, usually a man, usually his name is John. Yes, that's true. In the Western world, the most common CEO name is actually John. A tall 6-foot-plus man on the top floor, usually called John, and his job is to tell people what to do. And he's the biggest title in the building. That's what leadership was. No. Today, we need leadership to be the genuine desire and persistence to create a better future. It's not a title. Leaders are not those who win an election or who are elected by people or who are appointed by authorities. They are self-anointed to be stewards of planet Earth and humanity. That's the definition of leadership we need. Stewardship. Most people think of stewardship, a steward, as somebody who serves you your coffee on an airplane, or in the financial world, somebody who looks after your money. No. We need a better definition. Stewardship in business is creating economic value by integrating the needs of stakeholders, society, future generations, and the environment. Yes, you have to make money by doing all of that. That's the examples that I just gave you earlier. You combine both of these ideas and you get steward leadership. Borrow from the definition of leadership. Steward leadership is still the genuine desire and persistence to create a better future, but not just a better future for yourself or your shareholder, a collective better future for future generations, stakeholders, society, and the environment. That is what these companies that do well by doing good, the ones that are succeeding for decades, if not hundreds of years, have been doing. What is the practice of steward leadership? Turns out that it is only 3 simple steps, not rocket science at all. So I'll end with these 3 steps, okay? The first is to incorporate 4 specific stewardship values within the company's culture. And why do I know these 4 values? Because we deeply studied 100 successful companies that are doing well by doing good, all believed in these values, and they embedded it in their culture. The first is interdependence. Interdependence is the belief that the more I give, the more I receive. You ask the Tata Group, why are you successful for 155 years? And they will tell you, because from day one, we've put environment and society first. You ask Patagonia, they will say the same thing, anywhere in the world. Such companies believe the more we give, the more we receive. The reason business exists is to solve human problems. By the way, the history of wealth creation is that whenever an entrepreneur was able to put their finger on the most pressing of human problems of their time and find a profitable solution, they made ultra amounts of wealth. Whether it was Carnegie with steel, Rockefeller with oil, or Vanderbilt with the railways, they all solved human problems. Today's biggest human problems are climate change, socioeconomic inequality, cyber vulnerability. And if the World Economic Forum data is to be believed, $10.1 trillion of new business opportunities every year if you try to solve them. So let's look at it as an opportunity, not as a cost, compliance, or risk problem. So step 1, integrate these 4 values. Long-term view is long-term view. Ownership mentality is taking ownership for being a steward of planet Earth and humanity. It's a mindset thing. I'm going to make my life matter. And finally, creative resilience. I'm not going to give up on innovation because making money this way is harder, but I will innovate until I succeed, even if I fail 8 out of 10 times. Now, these values must be part of the culture. Either they are part of the culture or they are just posters on the wall. I'll give you an example of both. Netflix had, like every other company, a 1.5-inch thick binder detailing out their travel and entertainment expense policy. When to travel business class, when to travel economy class, etc., how much to spend for breakfast, client entertainment. One fine day, they threw out that binder and came up with a new policy which looked like this: act in Netflix's best interest. Travel and entertainment expenses significantly went down in the next 2 to 3 years because now employees felt the burden of responsibility. My own research on this is that if you give people trust and freedom, 96% of them will give you back responsible behavior. Only 4% will try to misuse it. Fire the heck out of those 4 people. In Netflix, they said there will be no second chances. If we see you violating the trust, you will be fired on the spot, and that's the right thing to do. Whereas in other companies, they're posters on the wall. And if these values are just posters on the wall, this is what happens. Many of you might remember this video that went viral a few years ago. Now, United's policy values include customer service, integrity, blah, 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 blah. Instead of feeling empowered to live the values in this situation, they felt compelled to follow company policy. Are you familiar with this case? Yes? So this was a short-haul flight where, like as usual, they offered passengers $400 and a free ticket on the next flight. That day, nobody took it. Rule book says if nobody takes it, pick somebody at random and throw them out. And Dr. David Dow was this Mr. Random that day. They went, sir, please leave. Sorry, I'm a doctor. I have an emergency on the other side. Please pick somebody else. No, sir, you're Mr. Random. If I pick somebody else, it'll be against the rules. I'm not leaving. Do whatever you want, he said. And they beat him up and dragged him out of the plane. When the video went viral, do you know what the first words of the CEO's mouth were? I'll tell you what the first word was not. It was not sorry. The first word was, my people didn't do anything wrong. They followed stated company policy. They followed stated industry norm. I want to ask the CEO if instead of feeling compelled to follow stated company policy and industry norm, if they had felt empowered to follow stated company values, would they have worked harder for a different solution? Heck yes. Offer them more, 500, 600, 1,000, 2,000. So anyway, step 1, integrate those 4 values into the system. Make sure they're in the DNA, not just posters on the wall. Second, now define the better future that you want to create, the collective better future, and for whom. In clear, simple, boring English, how are you going to create the collective better future for whom? That's your stewardship purpose. And then step number 3 is the ongoing one. Now that you have your own unique steward leadership compass, make sure every decision goes through the lens of the compass. Mars Company, the confectionery guys and the pet care guys, they have their version of the Mars compass. Now, they have a very similar compass. They don't call it interdependence, they call it mutuality, but it's the same idea. I'm told that in every conference room in Mars offices, they have a picture of the Mars compass. And employees are trained to say, spend the last 10 minutes of the meeting looking at the compass and making sure your decisions today are in congruence with the compass. If not, revisit. So it's not rocket science, steward leadership. It is about the consistency. It is the genuine desire and persistence to do it. And that's what today we have a database of over 500 companies because we recognize the 25 best examples of profitable solutions to environmental and social issues every year. So because of that platform, we have over 500 examples now. Happy to share offline if you'd like to. But that's the essence, ladies and gentlemen. So what we are saying here is that to drive climate and social action, governance as it is currently practiced uses the power of rules, whereas steward leadership uses the power of purpose, values, and profit. Doing well by doing good. So we are urging the powers that be to upgrade ESG to ESL, where L stands for steward leadership. Does the organization have a strong compass of stewardship values and purpose? Is the compass just a poster on the wall, or is it actually part of the culture? More importantly, have you created innovative engines throughout the organization to find profitable solutions to today's existential challenges? Ladies and gentlemen, that's what I have to share. Before I finish, I want to invite you to do one thing for me. And that is, I work for a nonprofit, as I mentioned, Stewardship Asia Center. We have created a platform for the whole world to share ideas on environmental and social issues and solutions. It's the Wikipedia of environmental and social sustainability. It's called stewardshipcommons.com. It is totally free to use. You become a member by just sharing your email address, and then you can start consuming all the information. If you want to be a contributor, that is also free. Contribute articles, videos, podcasts, anything that you're producing on the subject. To become a contributor, you just have to fill up a simple form. We will vet you once, and then you're free to post as much as you like. Either which way, it's free. This will become the world's one-stop shop for crowdsourced content sharing and community. So please not only sign up, but help us by sharing this QR code with as many people as you can. I promise you it will always be free. This is not a freemium model where later you'll have to pay. That is my promise. This is a service to the world that we all need to contribute to make the world a better place and save our only home. And business has to take ownership because we need that profit as well. So with that, my final thought, ladies and gentlemen, is that if you begin to think of yourself like a steward of planet Earth and humanity, you pivot from seeing sustainability as a cost problem to a win-win-win leadership opportunity, to a win-win-win growth opportunity. Thank you very much. You've been very kind. Thank you.
Rajeev, thank you very much indeed. For anyone who was in the room earlier, I let you in on my little secret about how I scientifically determined how interactive the session was for people. That's about how many people get their phones out during a presentation. So you had a phones outification ratio of at least 9.5 there, I think. So quite an achievement. I'm afraid we are running slightly behind time, so we're not going to be able to go to questions, but I'm sure you'd be happy to take any questions from people offline, as you say, with your contacts there. I speak for everyone in the room. You've absolutely put the live in sustainability live today, and thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much.